few seats also if somebody jumps in at the last minute. But thank you very much for coming, all of you. We've really looked forward to this event, Ibasho Belonging as an Urban Design Principle. And we have a quite long program today, but a very interesting program. And I'll just actually introduce, my name is Jakob Norman Hansen. I'm the global director here at BLOXHUB, so handling our international partnerships and collaborations. And with me I have also Ann-Britt, who is our Chief Communications Officer. And over here you have Sophie, and Dide is there. So this is a BLOXHUB team welcoming you today, and we also have actually our chair, Helle Søholt, who's also chair of GEL, who will be part of the program today. And in a little while, we will actually link up to Paris, where we have Yuki Ikiguchi from Kengokuma Architects, who will give you a little bit of a presentation about the Japanese approach to Ibasho, to architecture, to nature and aesthetics, and how you actually create belonging through architecture. So we're really looking forward to that. We know Kengokuma quite well, and also Yuki, and we've been looking forward to getting this input. I think a lot of you are also interested about the Japanese approach to urban development and to architecture. But first, I'll just kind of set the scene of why we're doing this. Why we're talking about Japan? Why are we doing it now? And well, it's spring, and actually this is a perfect time, because if you head down to the harbor tomorrow, you will see the Sakura Festival starting in Copenhagen along Lange Linje. It will be a celebration of Japanese culture, of the connections between the Nordics and Japan. And actually, Oliver, where are you? Oh no, he's in a phone call. But one of our partners is actually hosting that Sakura Festival, and I invite you all to join and have a bit of taste of Japan. But it's not just this festival. I think if you move a little bit further, you will also to Copenhagen Contemporary. There will be an exhibition by Kengokuma, and if you move further, there will be on the Paper Island also a new public swimming pool, which is designed by Kengokuma. And I think if you venture into the city at large, you will find a lot of restaurants have Japanese food, like we have a little bit of a taste here today. And I think the point is that Japan is everywhere. It's kind of creeping into to Copenhagen, to our Nordic culture, and I think we all realize that there is a connection to explore. But what we're focused on today is why is it important for people dealing with cities, with urban development, with architecture. And that is something we've actually been focusing on for the last 3 years in BLOXHUB. We've been going regularly to Japan, and there is also a very strong link here. There is a connection in our approach to nature, to aesthetics, to design, which we have been exploring. And we've been very lucky actually to collaborate with some of the largest organizations in Japan when we talk about architecture, real estate developers, general contractors, technology companies, marketing companies. So we're really getting a good set of partnerships to explore this collaboration between Japan and not just Denmark, but the Nordics. And so it's the perfect time for us to also make you aware of what is possible, and also invite you in to become more, I think, engaged in this partnership between our different parts of the world when it comes to developing cities. Because from our perspective, Japan is really, really interesting when it comes to urban development. If you go to Tokyo, which is the largest city in the world, it is kind of also a premonition of what we will experience here, also when we talk about the challenges of, for example, aging population and some of the social pressures. And what we find in Japan is that there's a great appetite for talking about some of the topics that we are very preoccupied with in BLOXHUB, which is sustainability, well-being, and livability. Because in the recent decades, I think Japan has been evolving at a very fast pace, been growing and become very efficient and very modern, but still also kind of maintained a traditional approach to, for example, design and aesthetics. But there is now a curiosity on how can cities be developed in a more sustainable way, and how can you make sure that that well-being is also being taken care of, that you actually create cities for people. And this is why we talk about Ibasho today as a kind of a concept that can connect our different cultures, our different cities, and also because Ibasho means actually that a place where you feel at home. And I think we tend to also feel at home in Japan as well as we do in Copenhagen. So we will explore that topic today from different perspectives from Japan and also from some of the activities we have been engaged in the recent years. For example, we went to the World Expo in Osaka last year, which you'll hear a little bit about. And we also started a new project on loneliness in cities, also through our Japanese collaborations with an architect company called Nikkenseke. So it is very central to what we do, and it informs us about urban development and about cities. So that's just the motivation for being here. I'm very happy to see you. We also have people online from Denmark as well as Japan, and it will be recorded. So in case you have some contacts or friends who couldn't be here today, you can see the recording later on. But I think without further ado, I think it's time to switch now to Japan. Mark, are we online? Yes. Hello, Yuki. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you very much. You are, I don't know how much you can see, but you are looking at a room full of people very interested in Japan. Some are from Japan, but and I think they're also very interested in what you have to say. We've met each other a couple of times now, also in Japan, but I think you will represent, of course, Kingokuma Architects, but I think everybody knows here that it is one of the leading, most influential architect companies, not just in Japan, but on a global scale. So I will let you take over for here.
Thank you. So let me just get the slides ready.
And Yuki is actually based in Paris, so she's not calling in from Tokyo. But Yuki is very involved in the projects in Europe from Kingokuma, among some projects here in Denmark. There you go. Now we can see it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for a nice introduction. I would like to say that I appreciate this opportunity very much because I've been engaged in this similar dialogue after our in-person exchange in Osaka. And I do agree fully that it's mutual interest. In Japan, we have a growing interest in, and has been for a while, of a culture, particularly in design and well-being in Denmark and Nordic countries. And I've been fortunate that I've been leading the project Hans Christian Andersen, Water House, and installations in CC for quite a while now. So it would be quite useful to discuss now our findings and what I find valuable to learn from urban design as well as the architecture in general of a Danish approach or Nordic approach, how we can combine a Japanese approach, our Kengokuma approach, and to find a meaningful development in architecture design. So here it comes. Ibasho is an interesting topic and it's very relevant. I find it in the modern society now, and of course, the issues that we may need to face more and more now. Ibasho in Japanese, it literally means a place to be, but what it really means is, I believe, it's a sense of belonging. So it's not just about organizations or physical place, but it has also a lot to do with the mental state. And so, how do we seek this sense? It's about our presence being recognized and also our contribution and engagements is valued in a different social structure or familial structure. So it could be in family, how you position yourself or how you relate to and how you belong to at home, friends in school, shared interests, and how you live together in community and how you develop common purpose to make living at work. You know, Japan, a large percentage, nearly 70% of our land is with forest, and we live closely with or to benefits, and nature actually sustains us rather than the other way around. Traditionally, most of the work, the industry that we are engaged in, it's a lot to do with the gift of nature. And that is also closely related to our way of living, and Shinto has a lot to do with it. Shinto is not a religion, it's not a strong belief in some figures, but it's rather a way of living that we are brought up with. It's the belief that the spirit exists in every element of nature. So we don't waste anything, we appreciate everything that nature offers to us. And we recognize the greatness of nature and appear them. We try to create the shelters to cope with, and we just have this sense of appreciation that is rooted in our way of living, which I do believe it's something I find it common in the Danish culture as well. And this directly links to how we also design to appreciate the element of nature, try to use the elements like tools or furniture and even architecture for a longer duration of time. We do also like and love how it ages, and the usability and functionality is directly proportional to how beautiful it is. More you use it, more comfortable you use it in your hands. We appreciate the aesthetic and beauty of it, and that it comes as the whole aspect of the design. And this a sense of belonging in Basho, I do believe that it has also rooted in our sense of belonging in nature. What we see now here on the screen is called Satoyama. It's the village or community that is built in the flatland at the foot of the mountain. So this is something typical in scenery and landscape that you see in the entire stretch of Japan, with the rice field, and is quite modest and the comfortable wooden structure settings. So What we do in our studio in Kengo Kuman Associates is to be inspired by this closeness of nature, how we traditionally find coexisting in nature, uh, um, but it's more about the sensation, an aspect of being finding comforts and inspirations in the natural settings. So what we find in and transferable in the architecture is to look into this aspect of every large nature is built upon a particles of organic elements, and the scale it also has a lot to do with what the surrounding is containing to. So it's in the scale of mist or in the scale of leaves that creates this large sensations in atmospheric environments. And we would turn this into composing a frame and passage. And in some cases, the natural elements such as water or lights and the ventilations, the air, is often considered as equally important as employing natural materials such as timber and bricks and so on. So the way we make this a soft texture is to look into the smallest increments of materials as possible and to reassemble them in a very particular way to create the sensations and architectural, more atmospheric sensations such as komorebi. Komorebi is, in Japanese, it means the ray of light leaking to the leaves of trees. And it's not our intention to recreate or imitate that, but rather to come close to how we feel and how we are inspired and find comforts in the natural setting by play of lights and play of assembling the small increments of natural materials. So this is what we call as the architectural komorebi. It's a photograph of a waterculture house under construction. It's coming closer to the end, and I hope that the people will get to enjoy it by the end of this year or towards the last quarter of this year. So the method and architecture approach that we have employed in this project is it's the same as the other examples that I was illustrating. Is about looking into the smallest increments, which is in one brick to build and such in volumes, but to softly engage them with the incoming lights by skewing the windows to the small small scale, and in contrast with the large openings of the skylights. And this is one of the swim hall that you might experience soon. And this play of lights and shadows will be enhanced on the surface of water being reflected and how you would experience in the water. We also have been cultivating our design method and approach by looking into traditional Japanese architectural elements such as engawa. This is engawa, the deck, extended deck to observe the moon. It's called the moon observation deck in Katsura Villa, which is to enjoy the view and being inside and feeling of this space in between. So you're half into the gardens, which is the natural settings, and then also being connected to the architectural structure and enclosure itself. So we often use this in-between moments to blur the boundaries and to soften the edges of architecture quite a bit. So engawa and hisashi, which is the eaves, it's one of the language that we use and learn from a traditional Japanese way of being engaged in the nature. So, well, with the modern use of engawa and hisashi, by employing, for instance, the cantilevered steel structure, we are unable to enhance this quality of in-between spaces in a quite modern way. although it refers back to the Japanese language in traditional architecture. So this one in particular, it's a museum. The approach to the museum space set in Tokyo, which I believe some of you might have visited. And we also use this and porosity. So in this case, it's a Hiroshige Museum in Tochigi. How we create this portal and try to make the architecture as accessible and open and transparent as possible, and in and out, outside in. And we have this sense of openness and transparency throughout the entire building. And this aspect of komorebi and a more of a sensorial approach, it also exists in Play of Lights using the lighting fixtures and an interior screening as well. And some much closer to the traditional form of an architecture, which is, and this one is a community center in Takayanagi. And how we try to use this Engawa and Hisashi to create an urban open space is illustrated in one of the examples here. It's the Gulbenkian Museum in Lisbon. So it's rather more dynamic and matches to the scale of the museum. But this one stands in two inverted curved linear volumes, and that is standing in between this beautiful garden that is existing and new garden, and that we have a chance to work with the landscape designer to create new. So this Engawa space is containing a sense of approach, but also this public space that is used for performing or lectures and extension of museum activities as well. And we do also use this Engawa language to draw people in. So it's create this more a sense of inviting accesses to some of the public buildings. And Hisashi, we play a lot with the formal gesture too, to create the sense of portal and gate and threshold between one space to another. So I would like to also introduce 3.5 of our projects, perhaps more focusing on in our attempts to support creating the sense of belonging in urban settings and landscape, and by using these soft and light architectural skins and volumes in harmony with the urban nature. So what I believe it's a challenge is, unlike the Satoyama or in the communities live closely to the nature and work and sustained by the nature, in urban settings it's just something quite different. It's not a community that is based on the shared interest in work or to sustain the immediate natural surroundings, but rather people might be drawn to common activities and sense of collaborations and creations. And more cultural and public facilities like museums or theaters or library could become and offer and support a sense of belonging in Ibasho. So that's what I have put together as some slides that may illustrate our attempts to support this. And well, particularly to the urban environments and the modern time now, Ibasho is often referred to a lack of it or absence of it. When we often hear this ibasho ga nai, meaning that there's no ibasho for me. So it's rather more of a tendency that the absence of ibasho is often more often used, the word ibasho, than recognitions of the ibasho in the urban setting. So how could we support this preventing this disengagement, or to create the architectural space that is accessible and open and welcoming, and to be able to be alone but together, or to share the same interest and to feel comforts and inspirations. So one is, of course, to still try to create this sense of belonging in nature by using the natural elements, and we call it biophilic architecture by employing organic materials such as timber and stone, and but also to engage and make the structure out of the actual organic elements such as trees, water, and lights and air. So by breaking down the massive volumes of the built form into a fragmented manner. So urban life between, I believe that's what we've been, or at least I've been learning quite in a great deal in working in Denmark, is this aspect of the urban space, that the life existing between the buildings. And something that we need to be quite carefully thought through is not just to create the space inside the building, but by implementing one architecture, uh, it creates the open space and urban space in between the surrounding building as well. So whenever we try to implement the architecture volume, we need to be equally careful and design and space around. And the last focus is this micro-macro design process and simultaneous study in both urban and human scale. So we study and design outside in, but inside out at the same time. And I do recognize the scale is one of the most challenging aspects of designing architecture, because it's not about designing stadium versus the toilet, but it's about how small or how large, what scale we should design with in that is suitable or more comfortable to the certain activities inside. So this human aspect of selecting the materials and composing them in such that you can feel it, it's tangible and tactile. So the quality of the materials and detail also has a lot to do with this scale factor too. We have completed and delivered the Hans Christian Andersen Museum a couple of years ago. So the nature and garden should be growing much richer and denser than what you see in these photos now. Is to the contents was quite also important for us to implement into the language of architecture. So of course, Hans Christian Andersen, it's the national figure and quite well known throughout the world. We also, as a Japanese, grew up with some of his fairy tale that gets fascinated by this fantastical descriptions, but also now that we come back as an adult to read it again, it's quite intricate in storytelling, and that it goes back and forth in between, and this duality between the fantasy and reality, nature and architecture, coexistence of the opposite and blur boundary in different world was quite an inspiration for us to implement into the spatial experience as well. So the way we compose the volume architectural built form is by composing this series of circular buildings. Urban design-wise, it was one of the main design approach that we decided at the very beginning is that the ground floor would be mostly contained with the gardens. So it's accessible throughout from a different standpoint of the streets and how one can decide to walk through it and enjoy every pockets by reading books or eating sandwiches and just hang out, walking the dog. So this, we thought, is providing a much softer approach and contributes to the immediate surroundings and community. And built form extruded above ground, it gets minimized into some accesses in cafe and children's studio and so on. So what was interesting in this project is that we have chosen to also build with the hedges, which is commonly seen in some of the residential area in Denmark, to trace the exhibition space, and that is meandering also below ground. So the space that is created by hedges is also experience in reflections to what's happening below ground, which is the exhibition space. So in the human aspect, we try to use as much as organic and natural materials as possible. In this case, the inspiration of the facade came from what we have observed in the surrounding buildings, which is a heavy timber frame and the stone fittings with the plaster applications on the facade, and the layering of the actual tree branches that supports the glazing and the roof of the buildings and pavilions. So we have looked into this series of different character of a garden. One is the urban garden that is around the light rail that cuts through the site, and multiple accesses that is available from all corners and along the sides of the street, and pavilion gardens that is immediately outside of the cafe entrance and so on, and scenographic garden that traces the exhibition space below that reflects also meandering and wandering aspect of this fantastical world and exhibition. Micro macro design approach also exists in the designing of the facade. So as I was showing the illustrations before, it is an attempt to connect and find the buildings that belongs to the language partly to the surrounding buildings. So it's not a foreign element, but it traces also some of the DNA of the surrounding traditional residential buildings. And this is how it comes all together. The light trees that is symbolic in the community, and also layer of hedges and then timber framed facade, layer of them. So I might be a bit going longer than given time, but maybe we'll just go very quick on water culture house. So again, some of the images on the construction of water culture house that we have chosen this very warm and organic craft texture of the style. And urban approach was also taken into considerations by keen observations of what's surrounding. What was given to us is to use the pitched roof and to belong to the surrounding architectural language. So, of course, the pitched roof could be interpreted in so many different ways. Rather than choosing one single volumes, we have chosen to break it down into smaller volumes, and each volumes corresponding to the scale of what's going on the space below. So urban-wise, it's situated at the southern corner of the papillon. So the waterscape, how it goes down in cascading manner of activities inside the building towards the harbor bus was quite important to us, as well as the building doesn't have any back and fronts. It faces in multiple directions, and accessibility, as we did design in Hans Christian Andersen as well. So this is how we have responded by using the language of ripple. So ripples in both sides, the greenscape as well as the waterscape. And the architectural form is created by pushing and pulling. So it's a series of positive and negative form. So what contains inside and at the ground floor, it's mostly about the exercise pool and swimming, more an active approach. When it's elevated, it's rather a quiet and scaled down and more a therapeutic, more meditative spatial experience on the upper level. And what connects in between, it's between this architectural valley, we have inserted the series of staircase and swimming experience. So it's both the sequence of the water experience is starting from the ground floor, very sportive and active, and work your way up in the exposed cold air and swim your way to the valley pool, going into the onsen, which is semi-open. So this is one a photograph that I've taken at the site. So how you can experience walking in between this architectural valley and slowly start to open up towards the upper level. So to swim through towards the end and open the views and a frame towards the harbor. Those smaller spaces could be experienced. And so here the scale is more on human scale, and it comes down. And the light that we play with, it's more subtle. So it's through the screen facade of brick and some more skewed incoming lights that reflects and emphasize the shadows and steams and so on. Last project is an Ibsen library in Norway. So the architectural approach is quite similar in a way that we do recognize the surrounding as the given built environment and try not to compromise any of the quality that is existing, but softly engage by tracing the line of the flow that we recognize in urban and wish to enhance them, to activate, and so that building becomes a hub. So actually the form of the building was, from the sketch that I was drawing, it's really tracing where we should not build, and the building was in the result of extrusion of that. So the park was, the extent of the green park and trees was kept as much as possible. And the building was formed in such that it takes in the flow from both major streets that link into the downtown of this Xi'an city. And connections with existing Ibsen theater was also taken into consideration so that it works as one democratic cornerstone and cultural hubs for the city. So, well, the close dialogues with the clients and municipality was what was very interesting for us, which is not always the case in Japan when it comes to designing the public buildings. So that we held a series of workshops and dialogues even before the project starts. So intensive dialogues to really listen what was desired, what was the vision that has been built by the communities and people in the city. And municipality was what was deriving of these projects. So of course, Ibsen represents the culture and also what the city is proud of and known for. So just like in Hans Christian Andersen, we have tried to identify the representative quality of Ibsen's stories and try to implement in the layer of an architectural layer. So the ground floor is a surface that represents reality. It's more open, connected to the natural park in front. And the peak, when it starts to be highest, that this point one can overlook the city, and this represents the imaginations and dreams and ambition. From an inside, it could be used for a series of gatherings and plays and activities as such. And underground is more subterranean, it's more subtle in the sense of lights, and so on. So, well, this is the library is a very interesting programs, particularly to the Nordic and from the Nordic viewpoints, because how this was designed out of the brief and throughout the dialogues with the community. So this has a lot to do with the openness and the space being owned, ownership. The sense of ownership is quite strong by people who actually would be using the library. And also that a lot of services that serves the community is taking place in this Ibsen library as well. So we have planned it in such that it's very open and there's no series of compartmented spaces, but rather promoting the free flow and free accesses from multiple locations of this building. And this creates this sense of belongings, while you could be alone, but also together. And the last project, very quickly, it's the installations that we have designed at CC. So when I was mentioning about this scale earlier, it doesn't matter if it's 10,000 square meters of a given site, or in one room at the exhibition and a museum of rooms. What we have tried to do is, an approach is quite similar. Well, of course, the room is quite spacious. It's a former industrial use to put together and assemble the theater settings. So what we have tried is to create this soft suspended structure using the timber, and also the bricks, and that we use extensively for water culture house, and some fabric that controls and softens the light from outside. And coming from this concept that is quite fundamental in approach of architectural design, is the canopy of the trees, and sitting on the ground where one finds comforts and inspirations, and provides the most beautiful gathering areas. And timber and bricks are one of the oldest materials, also quite found in all over in Denmark and Copenhagen. And timber also, of course, we use quite often for a project in Japan. It has the character of being able to long span, and joinery workability, and bricks. It gives this very beautiful natural textures and haptic quality, but also it's stackable, and it's a masonry structure that is enable us to build something grand, like in monoculture house. So our installation comes quite a direct translations of tree studies, the canopy, and art studies the grounds that we on. And some of the craft aspect was also we saw as a common quality in Denmark and Japan. And especially working with Dinesen and Petersen, we had these long conversations, be able to also work with discarded pieces. So on the right-hand side, it shows the, let's say, broken pieces, and they have a mountain of them in Petersen's factory. On the left-hand side, it's the Peterson's discarded timber flooring pieces. So in our it was our attempt to give another life, and to celebrate every bits and pieces of natural materials that is used for commonly for an architectural building components.
Yuki?
And here, yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are a little bit over time.
The last.
All right, great.
So here also that we have responded to this vision given by the CC, that is engagements and activities, and that can promote the constant engagements with the families and visitors are quite important to this. So we hope we have achieved this, and will continue to create such in Denmark. All right, thank you so much. Sorry for taking much time.
It's okay. No, it was very, very interesting, and I think we could listen to it a lot more. But luckily, we can also CC is very close to here, so I think the audience can also experience it themselves. But I think thank you also for your reflections on belonging from a Japanese context. It seems like also your practice is very much focused on how architecture influence people and the mind, and there's also, I think, a very valuable approach to nature, and also how nature can actually also create belonging. So I think that's something we can also take in the next discussion, and I'll ask you to also stay for when we have a little bit of a Q&A afterwards. But Yuki, you have, I think, taken on one of the most Danish concepts of H.C. Andersen, so very brave of you. And you have been working in Denmark for a long time, so I think you have some experience that can facilitate this exchange or dialogue between architectural norms and practices. But we also actually have Danish companies who have been to Japan, and where you've focused very much on the building and the connection between the building and the public space, the Engawa, which has been very interesting, I think for us also. Gail has been working very much on public spaces in Japan. So I will actually give the floor to Helle, who is the chair and co-founder of Gail, to talk to us a little bit about your experiences from Japan, how you take the DNA of Gail to Japan and working with public spaces and public life. So I'll give this to you.
Thank you, Jakob. Yeah. But first, I think we should give praise for the presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, fine. Turn it on?
Yeah.
It is on.
No? Wait.
No? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, first of all, I think I can cut mine short so that we stay on program. I'll try to do that. But I think this it's always so interesting to understand cultures through language. And I think this presentation that we just got was beautiful to explain. And it's true, we don't really have a word for belonging in Danish. I think we would call it maybe at være hjemme, to be home. Or maybe we would use the terminology at høre sammen, eller at høre hjemme, which is interesting because to listen, to be home, or to somehow relate to one another. And at Gale, we have always talked about this as human scale. And then we also learned about this life between buildings, which is really where a lot of our philosophy comes from, because that was the very first book that Jan Gehl wrote as a young lecturer. Life Between Buildings came out first in 1972. So it's many years ago. We have worked in Japan for the past 4 years. We have a team of about 120, very sort of multidisciplinary team, system thinkers, architects, planners, people working with urban design and landscape architecture, but also social science and sort of democracy and engagement. So quite a varied team. And our sort of core approach to developing cities is very much starting from life first, and then developing the spaces around that life in order to guide the transformation of buildings. And this sounds very easy to do, but it is actually an upside down process to how cities are normally operating, because a lot of cities are focusing on where to build or how to manage the real estate and then operate, you could say, that physical space in terms of transport and energy systems and so forth. And often the very sort of last issues that are being dealt with are the human relationships, life and how it flows through those spaces, how people socially connect and so forth. I'll skip through a bit of this, but I would say that Tokyo overall is sort of a role model for what we call this human scale, as I was mentioning. There's just it's so fascinating. There are so many layers and so many details and such a granular aesthetics when you go to the Japanese cities. But at the same time, the cities can be very rough. There is a lot of tradition for landscape architecture and the most beautiful gardens I've seen in my life. And always when I go to Tokyo cities or Japanese cities, I seek relief in some of these green lungs that there are in the city. But the overall urban landscape is harsh. It's quite hard. So there is a lack of green space at a more granular level, at the more human scale. So Tokyo, again, for example, as the biggest city in Japan, I would say is a role model again for public transportation, and really, it's an infrastructure that works really well. You can navigate it very easily, but on the softer side, the human scale, the life in between buildings, that level is actually not very friendly, or it's not sort of necessarily caring for you in the same way as we see it in other parts of the world. And this I find super interesting, because this is exactly why we think it's interesting for us to work in Japan. There is no, like, we don't have a word for Ibasho, but also there is no word for public space in Japanese language. And that is a challenge, because what we do at Gale is public space. So how do you sell something that there is no language for? There is a language about streets, sidewalks, parks, but the public realm as such, byrummet, the public space, is not a thing. So when we go to Japan, we have to explain what is the public space. How can we care for it? How can we plan for it? And so forth. And this, I think, relates to the work that BLOXHUB has been doing on all the sort of paradox of proximity. The fact that there is not enough care for relationships between people, reducing loneliness. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that there is no terminology for dealing with the spatial factors that enables relationship building. It's very, very culturally interesting. So we are working in this field where we are trying to move from an infrastructure mind and way of thinking to a social infrastructure thinking, and how the physical world can enable social connections in a better way. So that's about looking not just at the places themselves, but what they do. What are the types of sort of relationships and connections between people that we can foster with these different types of spaces? Gale became part of the Q Collective, owned by Hogohodo, about 3.5 years ago now. So we have partners around the world, but particularly very, very good partners in the Japanese context. So that is super interesting for us. And over the past 3 years, we've been working to build partnerships, for example, in Shibuya Ward. We are also doing other projects, but this is the one project that I wanted to mention today, because this shows how difficult it is to work, particularly in our field in Japan. So the first project we did was to evaluate a big sort of dig festival in the Shibuya area to see who is participating and so forth. And now we are working on this new activation plan for the entire ward. One of the things that we are looking into, of course, is this area is transforming very, very fast, and huge new developments are coming in. But how do we actually maintain? What are the urban design guidelines that we need to make sure that the municipality in this part of the city can be aware of, so that they can also maintain some of the sort of fine-grainedness of that urban character of the area? So I'll just finish off by talking about a few things to be aware of if you are all interested in doing more work in Japan. I think first and foremost, as we see it, a lot of construction and a lot of development is actually proactively led by private sector. Whereas the managing of this software, as I was talking about before, the construction of the horizontal public realm is actually responsibility of the city, but they have very little means. So what we have spent 2 years doing in Shibuya is actually creating sort of a bit like business improvement district like organizations and sort of connecting stakeholders in actually to take more responsibility to develop the area together. And so these are just a few sort of things to consider. I would say always context over copy paste. So don't expect that you can take any of your concepts from this part of the world and just plunk them into a Japanese context. My experience is that Japanese leaders, they don't necessarily accept things coming from outside. You really have to listen carefully. You have to co-create whatever concept you come up with. There can be a little bit sort of lost in translation. There is a language barrier. So, but it's not just only about language, because as you could hear from the terminology not being there, you have to sort of go much deeper into the explorations in order to really understand each other. And we could not do any projects in Japan without our local collaborators. So we work super close together with a company called End Partners, Yomeko, and other of the Hogahodo companies. And that's just incredibly important for us. It is the biggest city in the world, but in our field, it's a village. Everybody knows everyone. And when I sit in meetings and then someone can say, oh, by the way, I know that you're going to visit this other client tomorrow. And I hadn't told them, but someone knows someone who knows someone who knows. And so it's so incredibly networked and so work with that network and sort of micro connections, rather than trying to think that you can have secret client meetings. Human scale within high density is just really incredibly difficult to hold on to, and what I worry about is this shift that we are seeing, that mega scale is coming in and just taking out a lot of the ephemeral fine-grainedness of the Japanese cities. So that's what we are working to protect. And then I would say time is necessary. We have worked, as I said, about 4 years. We haven't come very far. In the Shibuya area, we are working to basically do pilot projects like the ones we've done in New York. But it's maybe going to take us another year to get there. So when the city of New York came to us for the first time, it took us 3 months, and then we had the first pilot project in New York. Now we've been working in Shibuya for more than 2 years. We are on the second report, and it's much more detailed and fine-grained, and I don't know when we will actually get to a point where we can start the piloting. So it's just, you need time, you need to work with the relationships much more. But it's fun and it's very rewarding, and it's just super interesting in terms of sort of triggering these understandings of spatial terminology, cultural terminology that we can collaborate on. Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm not here for the last part where we are talking about relationships and collaboration and next steps. But if any of you are interested in working in Japan, please feel free to reach out to me, because we can maybe connect with people there. I'm sure that Jakob and team here from BLOXHUB will do the same. But I'm open to talk with any of you if you want to do actual work in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you also for the good advice. I think we'll also come a little bit back to the opportunities, the potential in collaborations with Japan. But first-hand experience is so important, and especially this language issue of not having a word for public space is really, really interesting. But I think this is also where we can learn from each other to actually introduce some concepts, like Ibasho can be introduced to the Danish context, and maybe it will even figure in our formal language in a few years. You never know. But actually on Ibasho, we have been working a little bit on this topic of bit interested and trying to, or it's actually been also quite important in some of the work we've done in Japan. So for this topic, I'll just invite my colleague Anbrit, like Chief Communications Officer, in to talk a little bit about what we've been doing related to this topic in Japan and how belonging can be also part of a social infrastructure. So, Anbrit.
Thank you. So, am I on? Can you hear me? Good. Go.
Let's go.
Here we go. Okay, I'll shout to the room if you.
Let's give a grøn.
It is green. Okay, we first met the concept of Ibasho when we started collaboration with one of our Japanese partners, that is Nikken Sekkei, a huge Japanese architectural company. Because we were delving into actually this loneliness epidemic. We're not here to talk about the loneliness epidemic today, because that is, of course, the negated word, loneliness. We're here to talk about some of the solutions or some of the concepts that we can dive into in solving this issue of belonging. And what we very quickly encountered when we were in Japan was the concept of Ibasho. We were very intrigued because it's a word, as you've heard before, it's not something that we know in Danish. We cannot translate the word completely. We cannot translate the word completely into English either. It doesn't quite fit belonging. But we were actually wondering to see if we could use it as a sort of a lens to solve this way of getting people more connected in these cityscapes that we're seeing. Our problem, as Helle also pointed out, is not something that is necessarily the first priority for planning for a city. And of course, I'll just try to be a little humble here as well, because I can see we have Japanese people in the room as well. So I feel a little bit strange about defining something that is not part of my culture. But if Ginkgo Kuma can lean into Hans Christian Andersen, I can give it a try. And please join me if you have any good reflections. Ibasho is basically a Japanese concept that is referring to a place to be or a sense of belonging where one feels safe, accepted, and authentic. It is different from being in a presence. It's different than fitting in. You can sort of compare it to. This is being your true, complete self. It's a mindset. However, the word combines of I, that means to exist or to be, with basho, which means place, physical place. So it has sort of evolved from being a literal location to becoming this psychosocial space for fostering mental well-being, while also both being a mindset and being a physical location. When I was diving into some research on this topic, I found that previously it was used more of as a common word in Japan, sort of, are you okay? Are you all right? Yes, I'm in my Ibasho. And when we hit the 1980s, 1990s, it was actually taken into a more political realm and becoming more technical and used as a lens for something you could actually, you could also measure. So there is an Ibasho measurement index today where they do different categories of how you fit in or how you belong and how do you feel accepted and stuff. But that was actually based on, because you in Japan experienced a lot of school refusals around the late 80s, they took this concept in politically to sort of make it a term that you could navigate towards. When we did the book on loneliness, I interviewed two Japanese contributors. One of them was this guy. He's called Professor Sakakura. He's at the Tokyo City University. And he has been working very actively with this Ibasho term. What he reacts to is that he says we have gotten these hyper-efficient cities. And what he's really leaning into now is that we have this AI digital layer in cities as well that we haven't seen before. So he said, this is a new world as well. He says, we have now these AI measurements, these digital measurements. We'll have these binary codes coming back. It's either or, it's black and white. It's mathematical precision. It leans into our way of doing smart cities. It leans into how we measure quality in cities, its evaluations and stuff, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for social connections, because in essence, people are irresponsible. We're irrational. We're driven by feelings. We're not driven by binary system either or, which is something that you do when you're mathematically produced. So he is doing some very concrete examples in Tokyo. One of them is what he calls the Umamachi Living Lab, where he is sort of engineering serendipity. So first of all, he's made a pedestrian street, which is uncommon in Japan, maybe not so much here, but over there it is uncommon. And he does these very disruptive pop-up settings where all of a sudden here we are having our blood pressure measured all of a sudden and being given a drink. And this is purely non-planned. He doesn't want us to make a annual wheel and do planned events. He says you need to do something that just lingers. You just start something to avoid that this just becomes too effective and we miss the human connection. So this is a very big statement of his, this street in Setagaya, which is one of the most popular wards in Tokyo. Another one I interviewed when I did the book was this guy, Rico, who is doing this grassroots movement as well, called the Cleanup Coffee Clubs. He started in Ikebukuro in Tokyo, and now it's in 50 cities across Japan. While Professor Sakakura reacted to hyper efficiency, he really reacts to, he says, we've become very, very good at over-programming, over-planning stuff as well. So he's not an architect, he's a service designer by trade. So he is looking a lot into how do we release these systems, because he says, his claim is at least that when we have a lot of systems, so we plan up towards, you calibrate for individual, and we need to see to the web of relationship that gives its meaning. So he says the balance has flipped and we need to recalibrate. It sort of leans into something that we've maybe heard before in this urban context, the idea of sort of privacy gradient, that we have multiple areas to arrive in a space. He would also say this is the psychological embodiment of the physical Ingawa space that Yuki was talking about before. That before, we cannot just, when we program a space, we cannot just start with being that, we cannot just expect people to start being extremely active, talking to a lot of people, being very outgoing. Some people will do it, but we have a lot of people, especially when we talk about loneliness, that will have a different way of feeling Ibasho, of feeling safe in a space. So we need to design for multiple entryways. So we're saying we need to have a low threshold for being in a space where you have no expectation to interact. Then you can start, this is the sort of psychological aspect he's leaning into, then you can start feeling a sense of belonging, feeling safe, which again can lead to you going from being an observer to a participant and becoming more active in these. But you should be able to sort of tune in depending on where your mindset and where your personality are. So we need to look at how we program as well and maybe widen the concept a bit since our cities have changed. These are a few photos of Rico's, I call them the Cleanup Coffee Club. It's a very, very easy format. He meets with people once a month, every Sunday. They meet at 8 o'clock, whoever wants to turn up. They go around picking trash and they have a cup of coffee, the end. He says his idea is not for this to, this is not necessarily to pick up trash. This is just for him to create parallel activities that people can be beside each other without being forced to talk to each other. But they can, if they will, but if they feel more comfortable doing something as well, they can be around people, but not necessarily interact with people, depending on what mindset you're in. So he would say, this is not about creating events. This is about creating atmospheres. This is not about creating a function. This is not about picking up trash. This is about creating condition that is flexible in how you lean into a social context. And again, this is not about having users. This is about presence. This is about I'm just present in a space, and then I can start to feel more confident when I grow up. His idea has been very successful. It's non-profit. He doesn't take any money. It's open source. It's on his website. You can take these small templates to use, and it's in around 50 plus locations in Japan right now, especially also working with what they call the hikimori concept, where they have a lot of social isolation problems, people who are never leaving their home. This is also a reaction to this. This was a very, very quick run through of 2 examples that we've encountered from Ibasho in Japan. You're free to download our book for free. It's also on our website. But let's get moving. I know we're in a bit of a lack of time.
Thank you very much, Ann-Britt. Please give her a hand. And please, Ann-Britt, please have a seat here. And maybe I can ask you, Helle, also to come to the table. And do we still have Yuki? Are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Where should I stand? Well, maybe I'll stand here. Okay.
We'll sit here.
Yeah, I'll sit here. And then I just can't see. Okay, great that you're still here, Yuki, because we just wanted to do a wrap up and Q&A. And also, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. But I think, for me, it's been very interesting to hear these 3 different perspectives on Ibasho. I think more from the building side, from Yuki, and how you actually open up a building or a structure to the surrounding environment, working with this Ngawa concept, and then your also perspective, Helle, on the public space. Maybe starting with you, Yuki. How do you see the connection to also maybe some of the denser areas for example, in Tokyo? How can you really make this connection between the building and the public space and create this safe environment for moving between the public and the private?
Do you mean in Tokyo City or in?
You can use architecture and these transitional spaces between different areas, like the outside and the inside, but maybe also in an urban context, for example, in Tokyo or in Osaka, and actually using architecture as a tool to create connection between the public and the private.
Well, of course, it really depends on what's surrounding us and what's surrounding the built form and environment. But what I was trying to show in my presentation is that to introduce this soft architecture, meaning that it's not a solid, fortified space that creates this sense of safety when you are inside the building, but rather try to relate to an external environment by introducing porosity or soft materials, so that it's not creating a clear boundary between one space to the other. Especially the street scene, the ground level is quite important to be able to have this sense of openness if the program or if the use suggests more welcoming environments, and also but as it was shared in a Japanese notion of public space, it suggests very differently than how it's focused in Nordic countries or in Denmark. It's not, let's say, intentionally planned from an urban planning viewpoint or master plan viewpoints, but rather I think it's more generated within the shared interest or community base or activity base. So, well, in that sense, then how the facade or architecture volume suggests the continuity and linkage, it's quite important from my viewpoints to design architecture to achieve or support this sense of belonging in Ibasho.
Thank you, Yuki. And I was thinking actually, Helle, when you talked about scale, and I think when where we're from, when you walk around Copenhagen, the scale is very human in the sense of the size of the buildings and the public spaces as well. What was your impression from working, for example, in Tokyo? What are the challenges when you try to kind of create something in human scale and promote, maybe not Ibasho because that's not a word we have, but some sense of belonging and some sense of also social connection in such very dense environments like Tokyo?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I very much appreciate Kengakuma's approach to introduced softness and nature in cities, because I think, and within the architecture, because I do think that in our urban research as well, we see that whenever people have access to nature or feel a sense of connection to urban nature, or even the fact that you can see a tree from the window where you work or live, it reduces your stress level, and it does make you feel more at ease, or maybe as long as, or even belonging in terms of Ibasho. So I think Kengakuma's general approach in terms of introducing urban nature in the architecture, I think is very, very helpful and inspiring. I think what makes it difficult for us working on public realm plans, strategies, and so forth in a Japanese context is that there is no, which is actually also a concept of Kengakuma, there is that the boundary between indoors and outdoors is broken down. It's like seamless. And this is the challenge for us. So when you ask what is the difference? I mean, the public realm is very difficult to define in a Japanese city and culture. It is not only difficult to define because the edges are not as defined, but it's also very three-dimensional. So in Tokyo, you will find pedestrians at multiple levels, like 3 stories or 5 stories down, or and 3 stories up, and lots of different pedestrian bridges and so forth. So it's not just a ground plane; it's actually a 3-dimensional web that you walk through. So what we so where I think maybe we also have to change our approach to public realm when working in Japan, because we cannot contain it, we cannot define it, but I think we can still plan for a better and more integrated design approach, and especially by connecting it to the social issues. I think that Japanese people and leaders can see the benefit of a more connected planning for what is between the buildings, because it has a social impact. And that's how we are trying to approach it. So it's not so much about developing a physical plan or a physical space. It's actually more about enabling social connections. So in that sense, I think we need to be, I don't know how many of you in this space today are architects and sort of work with physical stuff versus the most of you, or try and raise your hand. Okay, that not so many. Okay, so a lot of you will maybe understand what I mean in terms of all the strategies that we can work with that are more socially oriented and impact driven in another way. Yeah.
I think it's a really good point that you need to not think in 2 dimensions as we might do in Copenhagen when we talk about the public realm or public space, but actually in 3 dimensions. And that's also what I find can be quite overwhelming when you go to Japan for the first time and kind of find yourself navigating also vertically. But it's also my impression that it is very efficient. Like for example, public transport in Tokyo is very efficient. You kind of guide it into the right lanes, and suddenly you have to stand here, and then you get in, and then and it's kind of this frictionless public realm somehow that it's very efficient. Oh, and so I don't know. You talk about also these creative areas and making, or actually providing some stumbles along the way, not to slow you down, but actually to make you stop and think. I don't know if there's any inspiration for Japanese public realm that we from Denmark or from some other countries. If you have any ideas.
For Denmark to Japan?
Yeah.
Or I'd much rather have the architects answer that than me.
But I think, we do a lot of tactile projects or pilot projects within public spaces where we sort of temporarily, like the Japanese example, we will reorganize a space and design it for a temporary purpose, and then we can actually measure before and after what are the effect on traffic, on how people connect, what are the environmental impacts, what are the economic impacts, and then we can have local politicians and leaders make decisions based on this data. Through the research on our public spaces and pilot project approach, we have seen that, and this relates to Ibasho and the work on proximity and loneliness, because we have seen, for example, when we have a pilot project, more people are starting to recognize other people in their neighborhood, and they start saying hello. It's not a relationship, it's just a recognition. Hi, I've seen you before. Then the next step is that people are starting to spend time in that space. So they are spending time in the plaza, they are sitting on a bench, they go to a local cafe, they are actually starting to have real conversations with their neighbors. And the last point is actually that some people, not everybody, but some people in that community, they will actually start engaging, meaning they will start helping out when there are events. They might actually start programming and planning for activities the next weekend and so forth. So we see the same stepped journey from being acquainted to someone to just having a few connections to actually getting friends. And this is how the physical space can actually enable social connectivity. And we see some of the research we've done now in New York and all the surrounding boroughs. There are more than 100 of these spaces now, 15, 20 years later. And what we have seen in the research we've done is that especially for lower income people who maybe don't have as much space at home. And I think this is also equivalent to Tokyo, where apartments are small. For those people who don't have a lot of space at home and don't necessarily invite people home, these outdoor in-between spaces are particularly important for social connectivity and relationship building. So there is a lot of things that we can learn from the research already out there that can be very applicable in a Japanese context.
Fantastic. And we are almost out of time, but maybe I'll just give the last word to you, Yuki, also from what you're hearing now. And maybe a reflection from you about where we can learn from each other with these different approaches to Ibasho, to the public realm. And Helle mentioned the social connectivity. Can the physical framework actually support that social connectivity? Do you have any thoughts about that, Yuki?
Sorry, first off, I just wanted to add to what Helen was mentioning about the urban environment in Tokyo, because Tokyo is, in fact, it's huge. It's quite extensive, and it's not everywhere that is Shinjuku. It's not everywhere. It's urban, like a huge tall building jungles. But there are a lot of quiet residential areas that carries this memory of a place and how traditionally it was also communicated in the communities. So there's a quite variety of the scale, the sense of scales, even in the center of Tokyo. And that's why I believe that this expansiveness and variety, it's even makes it more interesting of living in Tokyo. And the connectivity through the public transportation, it's very crucial for to make this extensive Tokyo area to live in and to make it feasible in the quality of achieving the quality of life. So I do believe there are a lot of movements, though, within the different area and the different community. For instance, one of the photos that the study research was showing, the last presentation, it's the Shotengai, it's a lot of small shops that has also a strong sense of community, and they work together to promote and how make it better, and how community can be engaged in enhancing this kind of small shop streets. And so I do believe there are different levels that can be interesting to further research into this enhancement of, let's say, on introducing the sense of public space in Japan. And what I find it also very interesting about Helle's and Gail's approach is more of proactive engagements to do research and test and to develop and to establish dialogues between the other entities and different organizations. While we come from, it's rather the architecture as the reflections and to response to certain visions or requests or ambitions, and where we start the connections from the response. And architecture is a result, I do believe, out of the responses and connections and reactions to what's given to us. So at the end, this approach that we have in the design, using the natural elements and phenomena and link this to an urban nature, it comes within but also from out. And while the girls' activities in Tokyo, it could be a very good synergy if we could use this approach together simultaneously in some urban space. So I do look forward for further dialogues together to find a moment of fruitful exchanges.
Well, that would be a beautiful collaboration, I think. So, and maybe also taking into some of the learnings that when we talk about loneliness in general and bringing in expertise from not just Japan and Denmark, but other countries as well, because this is a global challenge, and there's a lot of potential for exchanging knowledge on how we actually use topics like Ibasho to create social connectivity. So thank you. I will just let you go now, Yuki, because we've been very grateful that you wanted to join us today from Paris, and I'll also say thank you to you, Helle, and to you, Ann-Britt, for the presentations today, because now we will go into the next more interactive session, and talk a little bit about actually how can we collaborate, because as I said, we've been at it a few years, working with Japan. You're welcome to sit down if you want.
Tak.
So thank you very much, and thank you, Yuki. I hope to see you again, and I think that we have a basis now for a good collaboration between Gail and Kengo Kuma. But I just wanted to lead into the more interactive session with some snapshot ideas about collaboration between the Nordics and Japan. As I said, we've been there many times, so we talked to all these different stakeholders within the built environment, within architecture. So we have some maybe some ideas about what could be relevant for not just for architects, but companies and organizations working in urban development in general. So the first is on the topic of innovation. And we've been working with a company called Mitsubishi Estate, which is one of the largest developers in Japan, on actually trying to combine some innovation ecosystems. And it's been quite interesting because we do have some different approaches to innovation. We talk about design thinking a lot in Denmark, and that's been part of our DNA. But I think the Japanese culture has a kind of or defined by big visions, by bravery in innovation, actually testing out new methods, new technologies, new ideas quite quickly. While I think we in the Nordics are a little bit more cautious. So I think this innovation exchange is something where we can gain a lot of value from actually collaborating. Another topic is sustainable and circular construction. And the reason why this is relevant is we found out that in Japan, the average lifespan of a building is about 30 years. Then it will be demolished. And then actually something new will be built. So we're talking to a lot of Japanese organizations about implementing circular economy, more sustainable buildings. And that requires new technologies, but also a new mindset. So I think this is an area of collaboration where we are very much engaged, and also invite different organizations from, not just from Denmark, but from the Nordics, to work with us and to work with the major organizations in Japan. Mobility, of course, we talked about the public realm. Japan has one of the most efficient public health systems, I think, that we have seen. We have the bikes, so we talk about soft mobility or public transport, and there is some overlap, and there is also a potential for learning. We did see a lot of some bikes in Tokyo and in other cities. So working with not just making public transport more efficient, but also incorporating more soft mobility into the urban fabric in Japanese cities could be interesting, and I think we could learn something also from public transport from Japan. Another topic is city collaborations. I think generally I find that the city administrations are not as powerful or as influential as in many European cities. Much of it is private sector led. We just talked about the railway companies also owning a lot of land. But working with the cities is really important. We've been engaged with a city called Utsunomiya on seeing how can we actually implement more walkable cities. And coming up, we will also work with a prefecture called Shiga and assisting them in different ways, and actually helping companies and organizations from the Nordics to be engaged in Shiga prefecture. Climate adaptation is, of course, a huge topic in Copenhagen. For us, it's a lot about cloudburst and the water coming down and coming in from the sea. That is also important in Japan, but even more, I think, on the top of mind in Japan is heat. This is a picture from October in Tokyo, where in order to sit at these benches, you need a kind of a system for spraying water and cooling down the public space. So I think there's a huge opportunity to also use, for example, urban nature as part of a way to adapt our big cities to the changing climate, that where we also can work together. Nature-based solutions, of course. We heard Yuki also talking about nature as a very important part of their architectural approach. We also have a lot of projects in the Nordics on promoting more nature in the cities, and using also nature as a multi-purpose tool for climate adaptation, for biodiversity, but also for creating actually social spaces that create belonging, that create a sense of well-being in the city. So here I think we have strong traditions across both countries where we can learn something from each other. Work culture. Actually, Jukka Harika is sitting here. She wrote a book. She actually wrote several books on working culture in Denmark, which became a bestseller in Japan. Yeah, sold 60 or 70,000 copies. We were interviewed for some of them, but actually, there's a huge interest for how do you create this balance between life and work? What is a good life, and how do you fit work into that? How do you actually, we talk about loneliness a lot, but in Japan we talk about loneliness in the workplace. That is a huge topic. Actually creating working environments where you have the social infrastructure at work. So I think here there's some traditions, and actually building some of the offices here also in Tokyo that can provide also a different way of organizing work. And karoshi, as you know, is or maybe you don't know, but karoshi means working yourself to death. It's a Japanese word and a concept, which of course is something that needs to be avoided. And here we can influence each other with working culture. Harbor development, I think, is an upcoming topic. Copenhagen has been changed through how we develop the harbor and actually creating a recreational space, that making sure that the harbor doesn't separate the city in two, but actually draws the city together. And there's a huge potential, I think, right now in Japan on developing the harbor fronts, actually creating this recreational space along the waterfront, which is underutilized, and there is a huge potential. So working with the cities and using new legislative changes, which actually opens up the possibility to create much more public space along the harbor. Urban tech. We have one of our representatives here from Copenhagen Capacity, who goes to this Sushi Tech conference every year. If you're in the technology area, that is a meeting place for different technology companies, and actually to get a sense of what is going on, what are the possibilities when we're trying to improve public life also with technologies. So actually, it starts next week. You probably won't make it, but maybe next year, if you're working in technology, you could consider joining Sushi Tech, and we are also usually there from BLOXHUB side. Public spaces, something we talked about today, not just efficient places, but creating this friction, creating the creative areas, and maybe the framework for actually also saying hi to or recognizing somebody that you meet in the public space is something Gelis is involved in, but there is a lot of opportunity for Nordic companies and organizations to also get involved. Urban food systems, and I only actually wanted to use the slide to also emphasize how great the food is in Japan, but it's also something we talk about in urban development. What role does food play? How can it actually get us to connect to each other and create this Ibasho? There's nothing like breaking bread with someone that can really create social connection. So maybe that is also an underutilized topic in our Japanese Nordic collaborations. But you're very welcome to contact us, and when we will have also a QR code in a little bit where you can sign up. But I think my point is you are all invited to explore some of these areas together with us, and also people looking online. And now we'll go to a little bit more interactive session. Did it?
Thank you. Does this work? It works. So thank you for some very inspiring and contemplative presentations. It's been a true pleasure, I think, to listen to all the good examples. But we also have representatives both here in the room and also online, perhaps also having a lot of experience on how do we collaborate across Japan and the Nordics on defining desirable urban futures, which is what BLOXHUB's mission is. How do we collaborate? How do we bring people together in dialogue as well? So now I would like to invite you to participate a little bit in this dialogue with. So now is actually the time where you should take out your phone if you brought it. It's very rare that we actually invite people to take out the phone. Normally we ask them to put it away, right? So can we get up the Menti? It's coming now. So maybe all of you know Menti already, but this is just a quick survey. So the first question to you is, I or my organization have engaged in projects across Japan and the Nordics. So you can either use the QR code or you can go to menti.com on your phone and tap the number. So should we see how it's going? Yes, no. Okay, so we have actually some who have already engaged, and maybe some of you who have already joined in Nordic-Japanese collaborations would like to share just a little bit. We have a microphone as well, so anyone wants to say just a little bit about how you have collaborated across the Japan and Nordics? None of you here? Yeah, please.
Hi. It's okay? Yeah, my name is Makita, and I'm working for the Danish company called Nordic Innovation. Mm-hmm. And we do the collaboration project in Japan together with Third Nature, mm-hmm. the Danish architect firm. And we designed a glamping site. And so that is a kind of collaboration with the beautiful Danish architecture, simplicity into the Japanese nature. That is quite a good project.
Interesting. So many, and we have another one, yeah?
Hi, my name is Kostas. My name is Kostas. I am an architect from the Studio Square One.
Maybe you should speak a little louder, I think, yeah.
The Studio Square One that I founded the studio 10 years ago here in Copenhagen, and actually studied in Japan, University of Tokyo, a long time ago, and worked also there with Kengo Kuma and Yuki. Now we saw it today, and we have been with my firm trying to establish different ways of working. It's not easy, as you probably all know, right? And we have done competitions, won competitions, and tried to develop products, not only buildings with different scenarios, but we're still in the sort of building phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're extremely interested and interested to continue that.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I can ask you then, so not that many of you have already done the Nordic-Japanese collaborations, but maybe just by raising your hand, how many of you would like to join Japanese-Nordic collaborations? Yeah, there are quite a few. Actually, all want to join Japanese-Nordic collaborations. And I think you have a point there as well, that it is difficult, and Helle also alluded to that as well and told about some of the obstacles that there may be. It takes some time. So my next question for the mentee is then, What are the biggest challenges? What is it that makes it so difficult to collaborate across Japan and Nordics? So you can choose, and you have two options. So you can choose the two that you think are maybe the most challenging. Okay, I think we have some winners. Culture and business norms, language and communication, and lack of network. Yeah, maybe some of you who have put culture and business would like to just say a few words about why is it that this can be considered a challenge. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Aya, and I have a company called Aya no Mimi where we facilitate collaboration between Denmark and Japan.
Okay.
And I have worked
One expert.
more than 100 projects between these two cultures, and I think it's interesting to see the language often gets the. You think it's the biggest barrier, but behind the language is the culture and business norms, such as planning a process, taking the decisions just to find out who is the main decision maker, the way you set prices, budgeting, the timing of things, and why certain information is important. Seen from the Danish side, is really hard to know or understand seen from the Japanese side. So actually, I also voted on lack of knowledge, because it actually takes time to find out what you don't know and where you don't match.
Yeah, so you have a long experience with that collaboration. So do you have a concrete example of, what is it? What could be a situation where you experience that lack of knowledge?
So the lack of knowledge, just for instance, in Japan, the budget year starts in April, for instance. That means that things you present, the timing you present, or you need to define a budget differs. It's a practical thing, but if you don't know that, maybe just the timing is odd, and then it's hard to pitch a new project. So those practical things you can learn along the way, but it's actually there are a lot of willingness and interest in knowing about each other, but the things you're used to do in a business context could be very different. Yeah. So you take things for granted, how you make decisions in Denmark, but that order of thinking and the mindset is many times it's very different in Japan.
So what would be your best advice? Now we have a lot of people who really would like to start that collaboration. What would be your best advice?
Yeah, the best advice is to have, of course, someone who can support you locally. A local partner is essential. Someone like many of us here who can bridge the two cultures to get a partner, team up with someone who have the experience of bridging the two cultures, because it takes time to find out the differences in, I think, cultural differences are easy to understand, but the business differences. Just also maybe you often experience that in Japan you will not get a clear no or yes, and that leaves Danish side with a big question mark. But it's not because they are rude or they don't want to collaborate, but it's because of the Japanese language is constructed in a different way. So you have indirect ways of explaining things. So it can be frustrating, but maybe try to be creative in the way you ask questions. If you don't get the a direct answer. Maybe try to get this information you want through just getting many different angles on your question, and just ask again with different,
Thank you.
through different ways.
Thank you so much for very constructive and good advice. Any other who either voted language, communication, lack of network, lack of knowledge? Nobody said other. So, or regulation and standards. Who? Three of you said regulation and standards, or maybe it was the people online. Yeah.
Speak loud.
Okay, is that okay with loud? You need the microphones. It's for the people online to also be able to hear.
Well, I don't have a lot to say about it. I assume that Japan has very different standards, very different regulations to or Denmark or wherever else that we're working in. So learning that local system or finding somebody locally who uses that system would be quite time consuming, quite challenging, I presume, and equally for Japanese people who want to work in the Nordic region. So I thought that would be a huge part of the challenge for anyone doing a collaboration.
Do any have any concrete examples of that collaboration? I don't know if you have tried for a long time, you say, so I guess probably you have some experience with the regulations and standards that may differ.
I would say, a lot of the different things going on. The biggest challenge in we did a competition. We won actually a competition for a product that we tried to develop with a company there. It's some kind of tatami-related furniture, emergency furniture. It was very difficult to actually align with all the regulations regarding emergency situations fast enough in order to keep the project alive, because sometimes this is of an essence. And when enthusiasm isn't very, very high, and add to that the cultural, the language difference, the time difference, which is not a small thing. Time difference can be huge. So, the enthusiasm could just drop and then things just get stuck. That's something we haven't managed to address yet.
So do you have, so now you say you have, for how long have you tried to build that business?
Well, it's been a couple of years intensively.
Okay,
right
so
now.
a couple of years, you are a couple of years ahead of the other people who wants to join. So maybe, what is your best advice based on the couple of years you have already spent on this?
I would say from my, it's not like I have the answer, but I would try more with also more physical contact, like being there much more, and like being from the close quarters and build a network face to face. That is something that we haven't done enough. So that would be the next thing I would try actually.
Yeah, so try to be more physically present, more presence, and get to know each other. Yeah. Anyone else have some good advice for collaboration? Jakob has some good advice. You have also been there for quite a few years. Is that on?
Yeah, I have. Sorry. Just to follow up on what you said about being there, I think it's really important. And maybe just also to, from our perspective, the issue of trust. When you come from a Scandinavian context, it can be a different way of building trust. Our experience is that it can take a longer time, so you need to invest more, but it is once it is built, then it's, I think, more solid than in the Nordics. So it's kind of, you put a lot of effort into building these often very personal relationships or business relationships, but then you have established kind of a very strong connection. So I think my advice would also be that to have some patience in that process, because the reward in terms of collaborations is quite high.
Indeed, yeah, I can sign that up. And we have a bestseller book author here who has been working on the Denmark and Japanese cultural both differences and similarities. I think maybe, do you have a good advice as well? Or is that okay? You can also maybe give a little bit of thinking and then think if there are...
I can see like there are some similarities and also differences in the Nordic country and Japan. And its differences is the mindset, how we think, for how we understand things, and how we approach to the project or things. So without learning it, it's difficult. So we can misunderstand each other. So I'm trying to make a bridge between, but I'm still working it, and I'm listening to Japanese company who has tried to the Danish way and so on. So it's a ongoing project for me. Yes, thank you.
So now we mostly talked about the challenges. So maybe why is it that it's so interesting with Japan and the Nordics? Any of you wants to share what makes it so interesting with that collaboration? What is the potential of the collaboration, so we don't only talk about the challenges? Again, yeah, you have but thoughts are good in this context.
I think from my perspective, the connection to a fascinating culture. If we forget about the business and all these things, the connection to a fascinating culture is already a huge driver for me and us, our company personally, and also since I had the chance to live there, to just revisit that part of my life. So that for me is enough driver, I would say.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a big market. If you go well in a big market, that's also important.
Yeah. So fascination and potential. Anyone who didn't say anything so far? I'm coming around with the microphone.
Oh.
Yeah. So, Ann-Britt, you want to say?
I think this is on. Yeah. One of the things that I found mutually sort of enticing from both when I met Japanese people and also when I meet Danish people who are really curious about Japanese is one of their design traditions and the aesthetics. I mean, especially if you go back to sort of modernistic mid-century furniture. I mean, we were a lot inspired by each other. We had Danish architects who went to Japan to become inspired. You have the Halldórsson Gunnlaugsson house on the Strandvejen, who was very inspired by Japanese concepts. And then we would have Japanese architects coming to Denmark to be inspired by our design traditions, our furniture traditions as well. So I think there is a mutual sort of common language there, even though we're so geographically far apart, our cultures are very different. I think there is something in sort of the aesthetic language about the simplicity and the functionality that where we sometimes find and inspire each other.
Great. And maybe that will be the key word to the final part of the session today, because we would also like to invite you to continue this conversation so we can keep exploring the potential of collaboration and some of these common agendas, the common aesthetics, the common strive for coming closer to nature as well. So some of you have already received an invitation to an online digital community, and we have the digital community leader here, Tina, who will say a little bit about this, where we have a chance to maybe continue the dialogue in an online community that can span Nordics and Japan. Will you say a little bit, Tina, on...
Thank you, and hello everybody. So I'm the manager of our digital community, and I have already created a group around Japan and Nordic exchange, where you'll receive an invitation to onboard and be part of the group. And we hope that you will continue this conversation and these exchanges, collaborations within the digital space. It's yours to build. Of course, we'll facilitate it. And it also gives you access to join sort of the wider ecosystem of BLOXHUB. So I'm looking forward to welcoming you in a digital space as well. Thank you.
Yeah, now I see we have a QR code and a Menti competing for. So which one should we use for sign up?
The last slide. The last slide.
The last slide. Okay, we use that one. We have 2 QR codes, not this one, but the other one that is coming up.
Okay. Or I'll just get we have like physical handouts, postcards, with QR codes.
So there's both a QR code. You can also use this QR code and put your name and your email, or you can use this QR code. But even better for those of you who are here, you can also go to Tina, who will be here after the session, and you can be set up right away. So plenty of options to continue the dialogue. But we hope to be able to engage with you there as well. And I think, Jakob, you will probably also say a few words to complete this.
Yeah, just this is kind of becoming part of the Japan club here in BLOXHUB. It's kind of something we joke about because I think we also here there is the business side, but there's also like the personal fascination, the connection you feel to this great culture, and it's good that you have to go there to make business, to establish collaborations, because it is I think there's so much we can learn from each other. But taking that aside, maybe just also emphasizing the scale, I think is something that really interesting for organizations in our ecosystem. That one of our partners have continually 200 building projects just in Tokyo at all times, around 200 projects. So you can achieve a scale there that you can't really elsewhere. The size of the cities. It is, when we work with cities, it is a kind of it is very special to work with Japan. And I think, as I said, some of the challenges that Japan are facing now will come later when we talk about aging population and all these different topics. So it is kind of also a living lab. And I think we will at least support any one of you who would be interested in working in Japan. We expect also to go back in the autumn. We'll put some information out on Square, on the digital platform, and we hope to get a lot more involvement also from organizations around BLOXHUB, even though some architects and so on, like not just Scale, but also other organizations are already involved and doing business and doing collaborations in Japan. But we hope for a lot more in the coming years. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. For all of you, also thanks to online participants. Reach out, log on, and let's work together on establishing this close collaboration between Denmark, the Nordics, and Japan. So thank you for coming. Arigatou gozaimasu.